Welcome back! So after Kathy Creator talked with Cinderella about her data needs, developed the table names and columns within each table, she was getting close to actually creating the tables inside the database. But she still has a few more design steps. Today we are going to focus on what else Kathy needs to do before she can start telling the database to create some tables already. So after today's lesson, you will be able to describe and give examples for the 3 different data types used in Fairy SQL. And you will understand why columns have to have a data type before tables are created. So after Kathy has an idea of all the tables and columns she is going to create, she can open up Fairy SQL. When she opens it up, she has a few options. She can start from scratch and create a new schema, or select a schema already created. If you remember, a schema is just a collection of tables, and it has a certain name. The schema that Kathy Creator already created is called Cinderella 1. So this is the option Kathy will select when she wants to create tables within this schema. After Kathy enters in SQL commands to create all of the tables in the schema, the pictorial representation will look like this, filled with all of the tables she talked about with Cinderella. But at the beginning, before Kathy created any tables, the pictorial representation of the schema was completely blank because no tables were created yet. So what Kathy would do would be to select the option New Command. This would bring her to a screen where she could type SQL statements that would get the database to do what she wanted. This screen would accept SQL statements to create tables, but it would also accept statements that insert data or extract data. But since we are talking about creating tables here, we are going to focus on the SQL create statement and what words Kathy would need to enter to create all of the tables she and Cinderella discussed. So here is the shell of what the SQL create statement looks like. It starts with the words create table. This will be followed by the table name, followed by 1 parentheses, followed by the first column name, and then the data type of that column, then a comma, and then the next column and the data type, then a comma, and so on. So let's bring in one of the tables that Kathy and Cinderella created and see what creating the table would look like. So here we have the subjects table. So subjects would be the table name. We also have quite a few columns in this table that we would need to enter in the create statement. We could substitute column name 1 with subject ID, and column name 2 with name, and column name 3 with date of birth, or DOB, and so forth until all of the columns from the subject table sketch were in the create statement. So at the end, the create statement would look like this. Create table subjects, parentheses, subject ID, data type, name, data type, DOB, data type, gender, data type, marital status, data type, tagline, data type, phone number, data type, address, data type, active subject, data type. Which is pretty close, but one thing we haven't talked about yet is this thing called data type. We're not quite ready to submit this to the database yet, because if we did, we would get an angry error message that said something like, whoa, I need actual data types here, not just the word data type. We can't just use the word data type in our SQL create command. We have to specify the actual data type of each column. So what is a data type? Each column in every table will need to be assigned a data type. This will allow SQL to know what type of data will be stored in the column and how to interact with the data. So let's take another look at our subjects table. We can see that we have columns that will store words or text with letters, like name. We have columns that will store numbers, like subject ID. Lastly, we have columns that will store dates, like date of birth. So we'll break the different types of data down into 3 categories: text, numbers, and dates. Fairy SQL is pretty cool in that it only has 3 data types. When you use other SQL programs, they will have many more data types, but the data types will just be more specific versions of text, numbers, and dates. Let's take a closer look at each of the data types. Text basically will be letters and characters. For this data type, it could be one word, two words, one letter, a whole sentence, a whole paragraph, or just gibberish. Also, if you note, the text can also include numbers mixed with characters, like someone's address, or even just numbers alone. But usually if you are storing numbers alone, you would store it as a number. You'll see why in later lessons. In other SQL programs, they are often concerned about space, so they will have more data types within text because it allows the database to only put aside just as much space as needed. For example, sometimes a column may store a letter, so they have a data type that only sets aside a teeny bit of space compared to columns that will store sentences or paragraphs that will need more space per entry. Numbers store numbers. They can be positive numbers, negative numbers, numbers with decimal places, numbers without decimal places. The neat thing about storing a number as a number is that you will be able to treat it as a number when you are extracting it, and you can do things like add columns of numbers together. Just like text, in other SQL programs they will have more data types within numbers to be efficient with space, but in Fairy SQL you only have to identify the number data type. Lastly, there are dates. Birth dates, party dates, anniversaries, and so on. You'll notice we'll have all of our dates in the same format, month, dash, day, dash, year. In other SQL programs, you can store dates in different formats and with time as well, like January 1st at 12 a.m. But this isn't something that we're going to focus on too much at this point in the game. So now that we've been introduced to data types, let's take another look at our subject table and identify the data types of each of the columns. Subject IDs will hold values like 1, 3, 5, and so on. So this would be identified as a number data type. Names are a combination of letters. So this would be a text data type. Address would be a combo of numbers and letters. So another text data type. DOB, which stores the date of birth, would be a date data type. So not too hard yet, right? So now if we look at the create statement again, we would be able to fill in all of the data types. For the most part, we would have text. We'd also have one number and one date. At this point, we could hit submit. And voila, the subjects table has been created in the Cinderella 1 schema. One more example and then you're off to the races. This time we'll take a look at the party table. See if you can identify what data types you would assign each of the columns. How'd it go? Did you come up with similar answers? So we have create table, parties, party ID, number, party name, text, party date, date, see score, number, see comments, text, party invite date, date, party RSVP date, date, party attendance, number, theme, text. After Kathy submitted the party table, the Cinderella schema would look more like this. Kathy would continue to enter in create statements until finally she created all of the tables and had a schema that looked like this, filled with great tables ready to be filled with some great data. So now we know that the three different data types used in Fairy SQL are text, number, and date, and we can see how the columns need to be identified with a certain data type before a table is even created. So now it's off to the activity with more practice with data types, and then come on back for the next lesson when we talk about a schema that wasn't designed quite as nicely as Kathy's was.